it's Ashleigh from Sweet Dreams Bake Shop, and welcome back to my channel where I make a lot of cake and cookie decorating tutorials as well as give a lot of baking business tips. And today I'm going to be showing you how to make those rosette macarons as well as how to pipe those leaf macarons, and I've got some classic macarons thrown into this video as well. Now, we're not going to be focusing too much on the actual recipe itself. Instead, we're going to be focusing more on what you need to do in order to create those macaron shapes. However, I will put down in the description box below an Italian meringue method recipe that is quite good, and I have used it before. I am going to be making 3 different flavors out of the same batch of macarons, which, as you know, requires really careful measuring. And I gotta say, guys, this particular method is the way to go, especially if you've had trouble with macarons in the past, because this is actually a lot easier than your classic flat macaron, which I'm also going to be showing you how to make in this. But I think once you get this, you'll feel that slight victory of when you actually get feet on your macarons. Now, I know I'm posting a recipe down in the description box below from Pies and Tacos, who is the queen of macarons, by the way. This is not a collab or a sponsored video. I honestly just love her recipes, but you can use whatever recipe that you want. I have done this with the French method where you don't actually have to heat any sugar syrup whatsoever, and it still works. The finesse and the success of this is really when we combine the meringue and the dry ingredients. So one of my flavors here today, this is going to be a classic macaron, but I am going to be making it Earl Grey. And all you do to make your macaron shells Earl Grey is actually cut open your favorite tea bag of Earl Grey or whatever tea, this works for anything, and you just stick it right in there. And I love Earl Grey flavors for macarons because it really balances out that sweetness and adds just a slight hint of bitterness to it as well. So here we're just doing the classic version, and I'm just going to keep turning it and turning it, not really folding in the ingredients until it's a little bit soupy. In pretty much every macaron tutorial I have, I always show this part in real time. So for you new viewers, this is a thing that I will show every single time because this is the part where most of us mess up. So you see how I'm kind of looking at the texture. I'm testing it out over and over again. Now, macaron makers will tell you several things. Some people liken it to that of a honey-like texture where it kind of slides off, but if you really don't know what that looks like, I look to see, does it eventually go back into itself? And I don't really care about the number of seconds. I just care that in time, it eventually does go back into itself. If it can't do that, it means it's too thick. And speaking of too thick, now we're on to the Rose Macaron. So what I'm doing here is I'm simply trying to cut through the center and fold over the ingredients. You'll notice there is no stirring whatsoever. I'm really just trying to get that color distributed. I'm trying to make sure that the almond flour and all of that powdered sugar is all combined so that we don't see any streaks and we don't see any dry patches. And we're going with a classic 1M tip today, and I am utilizing this template just to make sure that my rosettes are fairly even. Now, I didn't get this as streak-free as I would have wanted to, but I didn't want to turn the batter anymore either because I did not want to risk it getting too loose and then falling apart. This really kept its shape quite well, and I didn't expect any feet to actually appear on these. Now, what I'm doing for the bottom portion is you could totally just do rosettes on both sides of your macaron. I decided to go with a classic macaron on the bottom just so that when these rosette macarons sit, they can sit nice and flat. Now you'll notice that I'm getting some peeking here and there, but it's okay because I bang these pans really hard. This helps to get rid of the air bubbles and it helps to get things nice and flat. And like I mentioned, it is important that your batter can eventually go flat even without any agitation whatsoever. So I would say for this leaf macaron portion, it's a little bit of a mixture between the super smooth version of the macaron and the rosette version. I didn't want it super thick, but I did want it to have some hold so that we could see all of the definition of these leaves. So you'll notice that I did one part first, and kind of like when you're working with royal icing, you let it set up a little bit. You'll know that the macaron is set up a little bit because it becomes more opaque. And then you go ahead and you fill in the rest. And because I went with a little bit of a thicker macaron batter this time, I really didn't have to wait that long before I could fill in the leaves. You'll notice here that these are going quite matte, so these would be ready to go into the oven. Now, if you're using a no-rest recipe, you can of course just stick it into your oven right away. While those macarons are resting, that's when I usually make my fillings, and today I'm going with a dark chocolate ganache and a mint dark chocolate ganache. Mint chocolate is my mom's favorite, and I made these for her for Mother's Day. Admittedly, mint chocolate is also one of my favorite flavors, but I really rarely make it because it's not a lot of other people's favorites. When I'm making ganache for macarons, I generally use a 2-to-1 ratio of chocolate and then heavy whipping cream, and I add a little bit of butter as well. So that right there takes care of 2 different flavors. Right here, I'm making my salted caramel, so I'm using the dry caramel method. You guys can go and check out my no-fail caramel sauce right here in the upper right-hand corner. This filling here is going to be used for those Earl Grey macaron shells, and then I'm going to place this caramel sauce in the center. And of course, it has to be salted. I absolutely love salted caramel. Really cuts through that sweetness. And this macaron actually has a lot of flavors going on, but I really love how they come together. They're quite bold. So I always feel like I struggle with my baking temperature when it comes to macarons. It seems like my temperatures are not as consistent as I would like them to be in my oven. I really should just get a temperature gauge. That probably would solve a lot of my issues. However, you do have to play around with your oven temperature when you're starting out and when you're just making different types of macarons. This can differ between the French, the Italian, the Swiss method, as well as vegan recipes too. So for these particular ones, I brought the temperature right down to 300 degrees Fahrenheit, and I baked them for 20 minutes, which is significantly longer and lower than I normally would, but I was finding that the shapes were actually picking up a lot of color, especially on the tips of things. So that's why I brought that temperature right down. I usually like doing this portion with a Sultan tip because when you squeeze it out, it creates an automatic ring for you. However, because I knew I had to pipe around the rosettes and the leaves, I decided to just go with a tipless piping bag and create a dam of buttercream. This is just my Italian meringue buttercream in vanilla, keeping it really simple because we've got a lot of flavors that are going to be going on in here. Now, when you're piping caramel, it can get a little bit messy, so what I usually do is I squeeze out that caramel and then I whirl it around so that it releases from the tip of the piping bag. Now, keep in mind that if you do make this caramel sauce ahead of time, it will harden up, much like many other caramel sauces will. So what I would suggest that you do is you place it in a glass container when you're using this so that you can just reheat it in your microwave really easily. You will want it a little bit more malleable, especially when you're piping it. And then I went ahead and I added some sprinkles to the outside. For the rosettes, I added in that dark chocolate ganache, and then I'm placing it on top. Now, if you live in a really warm climate or you know that your macarons are going to be in sunlight or in heat, I do suggest that you use a dam on the outside for the buttercream and then place the ganache in the center. This will just help protect it a little bit more. You can just go in with straight ganache as well with the ratio of 2-to-1. However, if it's going to be hot, I might up that ratio a little bit more just so that you have a little bit more chocolate and a little bit less cream in there. And these leaves are going to be filled with that mint chocolate ganache, and I'm doing the same thing with the outline. And here is the whole setup I had for my mom. That was a really quick little look at that. I'm going to do another video where I show you how to make those cupcakes, but here are the finished products. Now let's get to the subscriber submission of the video, and this is such a beautiful cake. I love these types of cakes. They're both delicious and they always look so stunning. So be sure to go and check them out, drop them a like, and drop them a comment. And if you want to be the next featured subscriber submission of the video, then follow me at SD Bake Shop on Instagram, where you can either send me a photo or tag me in a photo. Any and all dessert levels are welcome. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the Sweetie fam. Right now, I'm uploading weekly, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. Also, be sure to comment, request, or ask a question. I love hearing from you guys. Bye!